This should be good.
People often say that our ancestors ate mostly meat and they did just fine, but the data tells a different story. Take the Maasai, known for eating mostly meat, dairy, and even blood. For years, they were held up as proof positive that a meat-heavy diet could protect against heart disease. However, a new review by David Goldman says that's simply not the case. The Maasai showed high LDL cholesterol levels.
No, it didn't. Your own review stated that when they observed eating a traditional Maasai diet, their mean cholesterol was 135, and they had a historically low incident rate of heart disease, which destroys your narrative that eating a diet high in saturated fat leads to high cholesterol, which causes heart disease.
Well, I'm one of the authors on that paper, and I will acknowledge that Rip was incorrect about cholesterol levels. They were suboptimal, but not necessarily high in some of the studies that looked at them. But no, this does not destroy the narrative that diets high in saturated fat cause heart disease. The Maasai have genetic adaptations for more efficient cholesterol metabolism, they tend to eat very little overall, and they often suffer from infections that can lower cholesterol levels, among other factors. And this was stated right in the very screenshot that he shared. And funny enough, the last time that I pointed out he cherry-picked sentences out of papers, he blocked me.
I'm another author of this paper, and Matt's right. We actually reported in the review that the traditional Maasai didn't typically have high cholesterol, despite eating diets high in saturated fat. But that only highlights how the diet of this unique population really shouldn't be used as a blueprint for modern-day Western societies, because we know when we study diverse populations today, eating diets high in saturated fat does reliably increase LDL cholesterol. Even the self-selected online carnivore survey found that to be the case.
Early signs of atherosclerosis and widespread nutrient deficiencies, including anemia and low levels of vitamins A, C, and D.
And now we're just being downright disingenuous. Again, your own review stated that government-funded ranching programs in the 60s and 70s drastically changed the Maasai diet, leading to a much higher intake of refined grains, processed sugars.
The comment about government-funded ranching programs was from our introduction explaining why we were focusing on Maasai consuming their traditional diets, not those consuming more modern, refined grain and sugar-rich diets. Talk about being disingenuous. And even if the men who were found to have significant atherosclerosis comparable to older men in Western populations had shifted their diet, that would have been a recent change, and atherosclerosis takes decades to develop. So most of it would have progressed while consuming their traditional diet.
Plus, as we highlighted in the review, a minority of Maasai men consuming the traditional diet did have higher total cholesterol levels, and autopsies did reveal atherosclerosis. But this rarely progressed to complications such as plaque rupture or thrombosis, because the leading causes of death were combat and infection, significantly reducing lifespan. So atherosclerosis rarely had a chance to progress and manifest as cardiovascular disease, which is typically seen in older populations.
In fact, the nutrient deficiencies that you're referring to are based on a study in the 80s where the diet consisted of 80% carbohydrates, mostly coming from a thin porridge made from maize flour.
The data on nutrient deficiencies wasn't based on a single study, and that study he just highlighted wasn't even from the 1980s, it was from 2014. We clearly listed 3 references in the section he highlighted, and another later on in the paper.
It's also notable that women and children tended to only consume meat occasionally, and they focused far more on milk and maize as staples, so the reported dietary intake is still reflective of their traditional diet. The real question isn't whether one pastoralist population appeared relatively protected, it's whether adopting a diet that raises LDL cholesterol levels is safe across populations. And based on genetic and observational studies as well as randomized controlled trials, the answer is no.
Using the traditional Maasai to justify high saturated fat diets today is a dangerous appeal to nature fallacy, and it's clearly not rooted in any credible science.